Coffin fit. Let's say.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I'm your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, maggots, and of course the dog-faced pony soldiers.
All right. I don't know what. I just looked out before I came on here. It's like so. It was kind of nice, I guess, a little overcast, and then we have a little downpour. I'm not sure if that's going to stick around here. I don't know what's like on your neck of the woods.
It's cloudy, but it's not raining. Haven't seen any rain yet. But we may through the day. There's sort of in the forecast.
Have you recovered enough to go play golf?
I tried on Friday, and it was interesting, but I did get through 9 holes.
Progress.
Taking it easy.
Yeah, that's right. All right. So I guess, there's a lot of stuff to cover and all of that this week. Lots, plenty of news. It was interesting here with Iran doing this missile strike on Israel. I mean, like over 350 missiles of various types and things like that. Basically a complete failure.
Yeah, it was all shot down with, U.S. invented, sold to Israel Iron Dome system. It knocked them down. We knocked down a few of them from ships offshore and so forth. But yeah, they protected the country against a missile attack. In a sense, it's kind of cool. There's also some speculation that, Biden knew about this beforehand, that he kind of signed off on it, said, you do what you need to do, but don't do anything too severe. And, that's what they did. They did something that wasn't too severe. They said, hey, we're hitting you back for what you did, but that's it. So, I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, to me though, I mean, it's still a spectacular failure on the part of Iran, and the response on the other side was good. I mean, the Iron Dome, U.S. help from what is it? The UK, France, other countries. I mean, there was some unified, help there to fight back on there. There was some shrapnel, I think, that injured a girl or a young girl or something like that. But, if Iran was trying to inflict any damage of any kind, even minimal damage, they really just failed spectacularly.
Yeah, didn't get it done. That's right.
And just kind of makes you wonder about, who's in charge over there and what they're doing. I mean, I don't know about the speculation about Biden and all of that kind of stuff, but it just, if you're firing that many missiles, you think that you would want some to land and do some significant damage, and show that you've got something there. But now I think they become somewhat of a laughing stock in a way, because they just fired off so many of these things and nothing really came to fruition. Plus, as I understand, Biden, he was a guy who, wasn't in favor of the Iron Dome at one point. So, right. So,
right. Yeah, that's the one thing. Somebody ought to do a supercut of all the leftists talking about how stupid global missile defense was. Right now that it's basically keeping Israel afloat. But yeah, that's one of those ones that we were clearly right and they were clearly wrong on. So Biden, the Iranians told the Turks this was coming, and the Turks had communicated with Biden about it, and Biden had said to tell them, keep it within limits. So Biden did sign off on it. He did know about this in advance, and he didn't warn Israel. He let it happen. They just geared up to stop it, right? So, it got stopped. The whole point of it may have been to get it stopped, to see where the defense comes from, or to, make a point without doing a lot of damage, and kind of keeps, because right now, I mean, if you think about it, the PR of this does not favor Israel, right? Right now, it's like, oh yeah, this is atrocities, and you got to call for ceasefire and all this kind of stuff, right? If Iran carries out a big, effective attack on Israel, then that sympathy is gone, right? Then it's back. Things go back the other way. So, it could be that they just wanted to, show up and do something, but not in fact inflict a lot of damage.
Yeah, I mean, and we have this whole thing too. Now Israel is apparently trying to figure out what their reaction should be to this. Should they go
Right.
out and go back, and the U.S. the Biden administration doesn't want them to really go after this. They're already struggling with the whole situation in Israel with Hamas, and the last thing they want is yet another battle on their hands that they have to kind of monitor and say, oh my, so now Israel's fighting a war on yet another front. With all of that, so they want the retaliation, if any, to be extremely muted. And I don't know. I mean, it's I don't know if that's what Israel wants to do. Do they, what do their people say? I mean, when they want some kind of, I mean, nothing really happened. It showed kind of the strength of the whole, of what Israel can do. But still, you get attacked.
Right, and they take. Yeah, that's right. Right. He said don't, and they did anyway. That's right. But it's not clear that he, who the don't was intended for. It's like, don't retaliate, basically. So, I mean, and the other thing is like, this is, used to be like, there were conflicts in the Middle East. We were refereeing it in essence, right? We were brokering the peace and so forth. We're minor players in this because we don't really have any leverage, right? We've given up our leverage. We're on the wrong side of history. And, what that tells you, no one really cares what Biden says anymore. We've sort of forfeited our place on the world stage.
Yeah, and I think this is becoming even more evident with this whole ceasefire, negotiation type of thing like that, is that, they've pushed very hard, to get Hamas to agree to a ceasefire on this. But what it's turning out to be, it seems here, is that Hamas is looking at, the holes in all of this and saying like, well, we're going to up our demands for what we want in return for that.
Right.
But in reality, what they really want is, once again, as we've said time and time again, they want Israel out. They want elimination of Israel. They're not really interested. So they keep pushing the envelope. It's like, we want this many hostages for this many hostages, so they're amping up the number, where the numbers have already been lopsided in the favor
really
of
disproportionate. And now it's not clear that they even have a lot of hostages left to offer.
Right.
Most of them appear to be dead.
Right. That's the problem, is that, as we've talked about, it's just that we can't tell how many hostages are still alive. So, because, Hamas could be blowing a lot of smoke in terms of what they would do, but in return, they want more of their people. They want terrorists out of some of the prisons and stuff like that in retaliation.
Last week, though, they've said, we would like to give you enough hostages to satisfy this and have a ceasefire, but we don't have that many alive still. So, they've got a huge problem there. They killed the hostages, and like, once you kill the hostages, nobody owes you anything. Right.
And Israel has to look at, the overall situation of, you don't really want to release these people out of the prisons. They put terrorists in prison for a reason. You put them, you return them and go back. What do you think those people are going to do?
Right.
They're just going to come
back.
They have
not been rehabilitated. It's safe to say.
There's a high recidivism rate here.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and that's what gets me too. It's just it's almost like the administration doesn't understand, what is going on here. They become so blinded and so influenced by the left wing, that they're basically begging and says, we've got to have a solution. This is how we're gonna do things. We're staking a lot here on doing this. So please cooperate and let's come up with an agreement. But there's really, not a lot in it for Israel, especially if we find out that there's few, if any, hostages left alive. Then I think Israel's just got to go full bore. And once again, as we've said before, Israel has taken the short end of the stick on the PR with all of this, right? They've been hammered And thank you, left wingers, for doing this and contributing to this. Thank you, our liberal media, for doing this, to creating a situation where, despite being attacked, despite having your innocent civilians killed, in this attack in October 7th, that you come out looking like the bad guy, and everybody's all, saying, "Oh, we have to have, we got to figure this out because all these innocent civilians are being killed in Gaza and all of this." But despite the fact that, we know that a lot of this is, we don't know what the information is. It's the Ministry of Health, giving us those figures, which can't be verified. It's like trusting the Chinese government on a lot of stuff. You can't verify this stuff. And then,
you asked for it too. If you'd leave them alone, this wouldn't happen. But now, and the other thing is like, I think there's been 2 days since October 7th that the Palestinians didn't throw some kind of bomb or rocket or something into Israel, right? They haven't stopped. This was not just a one-off thing. So if they're keeping on attacking you, I'm not understanding the logic behind a ceasefire, right? You're still being attacked. You still deal with the attack, right? You still put down the attackers. Right. I think that Israel, they're in motion doing this. Right. The hardest part of these things is getting started. Israel has been thinking for 20 years now that it needed to just get rid of Hamas. Now you've given them an excuse, a real good excuse. And, the logic of not doing it with our real good excuse escapes me. I believe that it's time for Israel to finish the job.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, Israel has been, they've been putting up with these guys, and it was okay because they weren't being provoked. But here I mean, this is right. John is right here, right?
Right.
They've shown they have shown a lot of restraint on this. If you don't poke the bear, you're going to be fine.
Right.
And you can live. I mean, it's not the perfect situation. There's always going to be tension, and there has been a lot of tension in the Middle East for decades. But you go and you go out there and you kill these young people like this in an unprovoked attack, and then you take all these hostages. Exactly what do you think is going to happen?
Right.
And yet
treat them spectacularly cruelly. Right.
Right. But yet they've managed to turn this into a situation where Israel is the one who's the bad guy here, which just blows my mind that we're what, going on 6.5 months into this thing now, and it's turned around there. The supposed these public opinion polls show that the support for Israel has waned. To a certain extent, they're having, the support that we would normally have would be overwhelming. They've shaved a little bit off here and there, but it's without any basis.
Right, and that's right, and the left, they only make friends with Jews to get their money, right? They disdain them. That underlying racism is always going to come out with Democrats, right? I mean, it's a party that was founded on racism. It has been powered by racism since its beginning day to this day, right? So they've chosen their racist. They've made their racist choice. Which race should be allowed to prevail here, and they can't hide from it. They can't get away from it, right? And now you're backing the worst bad guys, some of the worst bad guys in history, because you're of your racism, of their racism.
Yeah, I mean, the Democrats. I mean, we can expand that. The Democrats have basically, pandered to these groups, whether or not it's the Jews, the blacks, Latinos, whatever. They have really tried to use
as groups, right? Not as people, but as groups.
As a group.
That's the racist kernel at the heart of this whole thing.
Right.
We're all just part of a group.
Right. So they by going and doing that and try, convince them that they do things in their best interest. But now we're seeing a lot of the truth come out here is that when Israel needs support, and they clearly have been the one that's attacked, they are not the aggressor in the situation, and yet the bandwagon has grown in various places. for things like this. I don't even know. I saw a sign. I don't even know who this guy was. I was going to look up this person. I don't even know if it was a guy. I saw a campaign sign, one of roadside here just the other day, and it was some Middle Eastern name type of thing like that. And and the slogan was basically free Palestine or something to that effect. And so apparently, I guess this person is running for office here in Montgomery County or whatever, and in trying to leverage that as a way to get an office. Now, Montgomery County, I mean, there's a heavy Jewish population on the one hand.
There's more Jews in Montgomery County than any other jurisdiction in the country except for New York City.
Yeah.
Only New York City has more Jews than Montgomery County. If you're going to do that, that's number 2 worst place in America to do it.
Yeah. So I question the kind of the wisdom of doing that, but this person may have maybe they found a pocket of people that have kind of glommed onto that, right? It doesn't take a whole lot to get people to join your bandwagon. If you're passionate, if you're charismatic, you can attract.
Speak to their racism, right? You encourage their racism. You go right into their hearts.
I know that when I went to that, I was leaving the area, the shopping area. It's like, I think they were doing some maintenance work over there. So a guy was pulled up the sign because you're not supposed to have signs out there anyway, and stuff like that. And so I'm like, I should have memorized that name. But I guess if I looked hard enough at people running for office in the county, I would be able to pick this person out without a problem, and then learn more about them. So it's because we've got, our primaries basically just upon us coming up here. So it's just kind of an interesting, situation that we find ourselves in. And I don't know. The administration seems to be completely lost on this issue. Not like it's going to cost them a ton of votes, because that doesn't, once again, around the margins, and in some places,
it's a big deal. And the timing couldn't be worse,
Right.
You're making a bad impression, and you really don't have a chance to erase it.
Yeah, and we're still about 7 months or thereabouts, or a little 6+ months, 6 and 2/3 months, whatever, out from election day. But every week, we meet on this show. Every day that goes by, we draw closer and closer to this, and the situation in the Middle East, is unresolved, and all of these things. That is kind of an overhang for Biden, because they seem somewhat directionless. They haven't been able to figure this out and make a forceful statement. I think, as John said earlier, we ran that, he comes across as weak, and that's that opens up a giant hole for Hamas to drive through, right? It's like, oh, look, we see a weakness in Joe Biden. We're going to go right through it and exploit it, and then we'll be able to get the American left in particular, all up and agitated, and they're going to make their noise, whether or not it's on college campuses, or whether or not it's the AOCs of the world railing against one thing or another and getting her squad to do something, and stuff like that, whether or not it's Rashida Tlaib and all these people. So that, there are going to be voices out there that are going to be speaking about this that will attract some attention and and some people will go.
And some to us too. Yeah. AOC gets excited about something that helps us.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
That's a good point too. That would, that's, I think shutting down someone's nuclear capability gets to be a little tricky. You have to really know what you're doing to be able to do that, because of the risks that are involved there.
Done it before.
Yeah. But once again, as I said, last week too, it's like, if there's a country that can do things, in terms of military defense, it's Israel. They're pretty darned impressive in what they're able to do. We've got a tiny little country with just an amazingly effective defense force and defense system.
Fewer people who live in Virginia. Population of Israel is smaller than the population of Virginia.
Yeah, no, it's just, it's a continual amazement to me, during my lifetime, what I've seen, Israel's resolve on doing this. Yeah. So, we talked about restraint. But yeah, it would give them an excuse to do that. Now that would probably, going after the Iran's nuclear capability, that would give Joe Biden a heart attack for sure.
Right, and put him in a pretty untenable box too. But
Yeah.
like none of this had to happen. Remember, we had the whole Middle East aligned against Iran. Iran broke. Iran unable to help anybody, and just barely trying to survive itself. And then Biden came in and let him out of the box. The Democrats believe that like there's a grand bargain to be struck with Iran, and we just have not had the right discussions. And they couldn't be more wrong. They're not interested in making a deal with us. They're the Palestinians aren't interested in making a deal with us. There's no two-state solution. They're not interested in negotiating anything. They want from the river to the sea.
Yeah, I mean this is all that old, liberal line thinking diplomacy wise, is that these are things to do and this is how you get things done. And what we've seen since Biden took over is a dramatic shift in what's happened across the world, and deterioration with a lot of things. I mean, a lot of
you're seeing what happens when like America has been a force for order in the world since World War II. Anybody who's brought disorder has had to answer to us for it in one way or another, right? And now we're not seen as an honest broker, and we're not a pole anymore. We're not it was us at pole and the communist at pole, and it's not like that anymore. It's we're just one of the other countries, and I think that was an aim, an actual strategic aim of Obama. Yeah, that's right. That was a strategic aim of Obama, is for us to stop thinking of ourselves as sitting astride the world, making all these decisions for everybody else. And it's like, we're just, we're as bad as everyone else, and we're not as bad as everyone else. And we're the only ones who've ever stood for what we stand for. So the whole rest of the world, if that idea is going to survive, it's up to us. It's not going to be defended by anyone else.
Yeah, it's interesting. All right. Well, we'll bring it back to our shores now. So we've got the Trump hush money trial starting in the sense of the juror selection. They've picked 7 jurors out of the 18 that they need. They need 12 jurors.
I think they've lost one, so I think they're back down to 6.
Are they back down to 6? They dumped one.
One has been found unfit.
So this is. I mean, it's not. I mean, Donald Trump. I mean, this is one of those cases, this is hard when you have somebody on the level of Donald Trump. When you're trying to pick a jury, when you put someone like this on trial, this is very difficult to find someone who doesn't have an opinion one way or the other that would be, so that you could find, what you have, kind of an unbiased jury, right?
That's the point, is that it's, to do it with Democrat prosecutors in places where you're not going to be able to impanel anything but a hostile jury. Right, but they're having a hard time in New York finding 12 people who hate Trump to do this, right? And I've seen a lot of people who follow this stuff very closely, far more closely than me, saying that the most likely outcome of this trial is a hung jury. That the idea that 12 people are going to buy into this theory of how this this misdemeanor became a felony, and this is serious enough to charge people over, and something bad ever really actually happened here, it's getting smaller and smaller chance that this will ever actually happen.
Yeah, I mean, the part of this too is that the way they brought this together too is that they created all these multiple charges. They
obviously compromised judge, obviously compromised prosecutor, ran on, I'm going to get Trump, right? That's, that was his campaign. So now when you say, okay, well, this was an even-handed, and that's what part of what the judge got at yesterday, part of what people are getting at about this is like, when other people did this, you didn't do anything about it, right? It was just this one. So why is it just this one,
Yeah. So I think, in terms of what the final outcome will be, is that I think it is going to be kind of hard to convict him on all these charges, because you do finally get your jury impaneled, and you start the trial maybe next week, depends upon how, if they're able to speed this up. But are you going to get 12 people to agree to convict Donald Trump? Are you going to have some holdouts? And I think I think if you look at the case reasonably, you and I are the average Joe citizen. We could be impaneled on certain juries for certain things, right? As part of our civic duty, we get called to jury duty. We look at that, but we could easily say in some cases like, no, these facts don't add up. It doesn't make sense why they brought this, and then it just then it goes to pot, and then you just see Alvin Bragg and company and these guys, and it's like, well, we put all our marbles on the table here trying to go after Trump, and we came up with nothing. And I think it's kind of ludicrous to take, like they broke this thing up of every single, like, a check, I guess, that was written to Cohen or whatever is a separate charge, rather than saying like, we believe that all of this, as a group is one thing, but I think that's a headline grabbing type of a thing. It's like, we have
34 counts.
34 counts,
doing the same thing.
Same
34
thing.
times.
Right. Right. It's like,
but the whole thing's a sham. So, once you start shamming, what's the limit?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we're going to see some interesting things develop as a result of this. And it does call into question, the judicial system up in New York and exactly who's, what are these people doing up there? But, if you ran on the, on the program that you're going to say, I'm going to get Donald Trump, and that attracted enough people to vote for you and put you into office, then you better go follow through on that. But if there's no case, you're just going to come out looking like a fool in the end.
Right.
And it's so.
Here's the thing I'm watching about this. Okay, so they're making Trump be there for the whole trial. He's got to show up every day. This judge has ordered him to show up. Okay, so every day after it, Trump has a 15 or 20-minute press conference at which he lambasts the judge, the prosecutor, the case, the Democrats, whoever, right? So, and then he goes out somewhere in New York, right? He went to the cop who was killed. He went to a church or something yesterday, right? So he's going out and mixing with the New Yorkers. So, when all this started, like Biden was 17 points ahead in New York. Now he's 6 points ahead. So Trump being around New York City and going to all these events and campaigning at all these places because it's the only place he can get to, right? After these full days in the courtroom, right? He's catching up in New York. So if you ever see a poll that says Trump is within the margin of error in New York, then you will be about 2 days away from Judge Marchand saying, never mind that showing up for court every day thing, right? This is clearly, yeah, that's right. So that's what you'll see, like the need for Donald Trump to be here every day is no longer realized because he's getting votes out of it. He's getting more popular out of it.
Yeah, John's comment was interesting because it's kind of true. I'm not quite, Montgomery County, at least, always pulled from the voter pool, right? I mean, the registered voters in terms of who, was randomly selected on jury, to be called for jury duty, which only meant that you had to, most cases, just show up. And most of the time, you were dismissed before you ever got anywhere close to sniffing a jury. I don't know what Virginia does for their selection, but I can't remember the last time I got a jury summons. And I think actually the last time a jury summons showed up in the mail in my house, it was for my mother. There was no way that they were going to put her in the pool. She automatically was able to, we could disqualify her because of her age and infirmities and knock her out of that, immediately. But yeah, it becomes, now that I'm older, is that, do they want somebody like me? Do I represent, what they want on the jury pool? Probably not,
Probably not.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got, so I've got my opinions and things like that. And I would honestly,
people with malleable ethics.
Yeah, that's basically what it is that we're going to be here so that we can influence you in your opinion, to come to our side, whether or not we're, even if we're completely wrong, so we get this crook off off the hook or whatever. Yeah, it's interesting to see how that's all developing. But I hadn't really thought about it, John, until you mentioned that in terms of, man, yeah, what I don't miss it because it was always just such a pain to drive down, park and then show up and then wait around and wait around and wait around until they called your number, and then they'll say, okay, well, we'll send you back. And then by like noon, they'll like, okay, you're free to go home. And if you want the $15, you go do this. If you just want to donate it, fill out this form, and you can donate the money to some local charity that they've designated or whatever, and things like that. One thing that always got me was technically, I think they, what was it? The money you earned from jury duty. How do they treat that as income? What was the rule? There was some kind of screwy rule. It wasn't, for $15,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think your employer.
That's not what I normally get in a day.
Yeah. I don't think
spike my income with that one, buddy.
Yeah, I don't think your employer was legally obligated to pay. You basically you could take a day off work or a half day off work to do that. So yeah, you were doing your civic duty and suffering, a potential hit. Though, we always, anytime we ever had anybody working for us, if they had jury duty, no matter where the jurisdiction was, is that, that was not a punishment for them. They were going to get paid. Though I think the chances of getting selected, was higher in the district. I think we had 1 or 2 district residents, and they were getting called more often. They said $299. How much were they paying you? I mean, it's like usually, in Maryland or Montgomery County, it's like there was one day or one trial. So if you didn't get selected for a trial, you were done, and then they couldn't. You weren't back in the pool for another 3 or 4 years or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I saw a couple of clips from, I guess it was from RNC's their research Twitter page and stuff like that. Biden on the campaign trail with this story that that came out of nowhere. Really, for talking to people, and he starts talking about the story about how he was in a hotel room and there was some banging on the door and he was wearing a towel. He had shaving cream on his face, and he answers the door, and it was a former state representative and some other guy. I don't know where that story was going. I don't know why he brought up that story. He seemed to be grasping at trying to remember all the facts to begin with, and how many decades ago this was and stuff like that. But that was weird. And then they had another clip of Biden, with these children. He was holding this young girl's hand, and then this other kid held his hand, and they're walking and they're doing something. And you're like, and there's some people going, Joe. It's like, okay, RNC, preface, they put that on there as, as a whole, prearranged, it was all set up and stuff like that, which obviously it was. My first reaction a couple of things, I guess. One, Joe holding a young girl's hand scares me to death. The other thing is that I thought maybe he was holding her hand because it was all he needed to find out where he's supposed to go. Right.
Well, I'll tell you what. So I don't know if you saw this one recently, but there was a little girl in the crowd, and he's giving a talk, and they're introducing him, right? And he can't. You can watch it. It's like he can't take it. He just has to go at the little girl, right? And he like knocks people out of the way and gets over to this little girl. And, and then when he gets to talking, he goes, I got to tell you, like, she's more important to me than any of you, right? Or some kind of comment to that effect, right? But I mean, the whole thing, it's like the look on his face, like, I got to get that one, is weird. It was very weird. So, I don't know. He obviously has some kind of problem with, touching children improperly and whatnot. Most people would say that's kind of disqualifying for a president, but hey, here we are. And we're almost done with it, basically.
I don't know. I think if he was in the UK, I think a lot of people would easily label him what they call a pedophile.
Yeah,
It's
pedophile bugger.
it's kind of bordering on that because his 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 interactions are just weird. They're creepy.
Yeah.
They are kind of pervy, and stuff like that.
Yeah, you put that with the stuff in his daughter's diary. He pretty
Yeah,
obviously
yeah, just
molested her.
kind of a long history of all these things and the way he touches people and stuff like that. It's just unsettling to begin with. And
That's
then
one of the things that kills the Democrats about Trump, by the way, is that for all their efforts to pass off Joe as a lunchbox guy and everything, because Joe doesn't like being. He wants to be an elite, right? So he's pretending to be something he's not. Trump, is very comfortable with the lunchbox people, right? He knows exactly how to talk to them, and it drives them crazy. It drives the left crazy. Like you see, and I don't know, you see, there's been a couple clips in the last week. He lands and there's cops, and like cops come out of the woodwork to shake his hand, and he's like, "Yo, let's get in a picture, y'all." And they're like, "Oh yeah, cool." And they all gather around and take a picture, and then they're in a line, right? And every one of these things, you watch it. Trump goes down the line and he shakes every one of their hands, right? Biden doesn't even look at those people.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a clip that's out too showing that Trump, because he's been up in there, he's out in Harlem and people are shouting for Trump, right? In Harlem.
That's right. That's right. And you don't have to win New York City to win New York State, but you just got to knock the margins down. He's knocking the margins down, and every day, he is set free at 4:30 in the afternoon in the middle of New York to go campaign. So, I mean, they may want to think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I know there was something of him going to a Chick-fil-A, and then I guess he bought people shakes or something.
Yeah, bought everybody shakes.
Yeah, and stuff like that. I mean, he just doing things. I mean, I don't remember seeing Biden, going around buying everybody, ice cream cones when he's going
right.
out.
I mean, Trump's always like, let's have a party, and I mean, you think about even the things he's been criticized for. He goes to Puerto Rico. What did he get criticized for? Remember, he was throwing the paper towels, right? Well, everybody was having fun, right? There was the place had been blown up by a hurricane. Trump has this rally. Everybody's laughing, having fun. He's like, "Yeah, we brought you a bunch of stuff," and he's throwing. No one said, "Oh, wow! Now that I caught one of Trump's rolls of paper towel, my life is back to normal." But it was just sort of a moment, and they can't stand that because, when you look at their politics is the politics of anger and resentment and jealousy and so forth, and ours is especially with Trump is a politics of joy. It's fun. The people are having a blast. They can't stand that. They can't stand that it's fun.
Yeah, I'm beginning to wonder too. I mean, because we've talked at length in the past about the Democrats and their strategy with Trump. They didn't not wanting him to run, trying to find ways, throwing all these court cases at him, thinking that would derail him, and it wound up in essence boosting his candidacy, and he's now a presumptive nominee, and so now we're going to have a rematch, here in November, and I'm beginning to wonder if the same thing doesn't somewhat hold here, more specifically in New York, is that this trial in New York is backfiring spectacularly on the Democrats already. We haven't even started an official trial. Like I said, they have juror selection that's going through, but the fact that Trump is there in New York and doing some, going around and doing some stuff, and as you say, kind of cutting the margins, the polls, in New York. So, I mean, that just tells me that, that they may have miscalculated on this one again too. Is the thing. He's like, yeah, you force him to be there. Okay, this was, your judge, basically said he's got to be there, and then what? Bam, Trump gets out there, and they always used to talk about lunch bucket Joe, but if there's a guy who's more of the people or the people person, it's Donald Trump at this point.
Yeah.
Joe Biden can't relate to people like Donald Trump can.
Right. That's right. That's right. That's what they do. So they kind of need some misery and dissension. And if there's not enough there, they'll create some.
Right, and that's their problem. I think is that they can't find what they want, so they've been trying to manufacture all these things, and it's really not working on their end at all. I mean, it's I mean, I don't know. I mean, we have this Senate race in Maryland, which I've talked about before with Larry Hogan. Uh, Hogan Hogan should win the primary. I don't I looked at the opposition. I don't think any of those people have a chance because I think Hogan's name recognition will
Right.
easily carry him through the primary. And then it just depends upon whether or not he goes up against David Trone or Angela Also Brooks. And that primary for the Democrats may be an interesting one to see who wins that nomination. But
That will tell you that that's an important primary because also Brooks is a Biden type of Democrat, and Trone is sort of representative of a new sort of almost business class kind of Democrat, right? That they're not as involved in the class wars and all that kind of stuff. It's just more, managing tax policy, making sure the government has enough money and so forth like that. So, it's like, where are the Democrats, and whoever wins that probably wins, right? Probably wins the general. Wouldn't you think? You don't think Hogan can win the general, do you?
this is going to be interesting because
He's
Hogan's
won twice
popularity.
statewide. He won't have any support from Republicans, right? Republicans aren't going to give him any money. Party's not going to work with him. It's really not worth it, right? So what if he wins? Right? You're probably in control of the Senate without him, and he's not helpful to the agenda at all.
Yeah, so I mean it puts the Republicans in kind of an odd situation because you get him elected and then you probably
For
win
what?
control of the Senate. So that's a plus, you know. But we know what his politics basically are, and he's just going to
Democrat.
be in that Susan Collins, Mitt Romney camp or whatever. So we kind of know where he's likely to wind up. That he's not going to be a reliable Republican vote on all the issues. So that's problematic there. Could he win in Maryland? I think he stands. I think he stands an outside chance of doing so, even with the voter registration being so lopsided, because he's highly popular. He was a highly popular governor, and he's got better name recognition than David Trone or Angela Also Brooks. And he just did. He's trying to replicate his successful gubernatorial campaigns. He's brought back his bus. He had this massive bus. He just did a back to work tour and he hit every single county in the state of Maryland over the last few weeks and was on the ground. He was at deli shop, little small businesses, whatever. He was out there meeting and greeting, sharing a beer with somebody or whatever, or maybe a meal or some, maybe a donut or whatever it is. But he was out there doing, which is basically what he did. When he first got elected, is he used that bus and they did that bus tour. I mean, you remember John McCain had his bus and everything like that. But Larry Hogan, he's used that to great effect. And who knows whether or not that'll play out. I mean, there are disaffected Republicans in the state of Maryland because he and Trump are at odds, and there are a lot of Trump Republicans who might have second thoughts. But the Democrats' problem with Hogan, besides the popularity standpoint, is basically they can't really find a way to attack him except saying like, we can't, you have to elect David Trone, or you have to elect, me, because otherwise we might lose the Senate majority. I mean, it's not issues, it's just numbers. And so it's like,
He's basically a Democrat.
yeah, it's basically, yeah. I mean, it's like you have to vote for me to keep so that the Democrats stay in control of the Senate. That's basically their sole
Basically
argument.
their argument. Yeah.
That's it. And so
That's
that
basically
I think,
the argument for Hogan too, is it does get you a step closer. But I don't think Republicans are going to need him, and I definitely wouldn't put any money to his campaign if you don't need him.
yeah, right. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how that all kind of shakes out. I mean, I'm just kind of watching that and seeing what once Hogan actually knows whose opponent is, what he'll do next. Because this time around, I think whether or not it's also Brooks or Trone, I think either one of them would be better candidates or more formidable candidates in a sense than who he ran against when he ran for governor.
Right.
I think it moves it a step up. The times he ran for governor, the Democrats just threw up two horrible candidates. This time around, he's going to have to really position himself and be ready to fight for these voters. So
yeah. Oh, there you go.
So we'll have to wait and see how that all goes.
So Senator Kennedy, I guess they're saying he's going to be in Shreveport. He really is the voice of the Senate right now for Republicans.
I love what he does at those hearings when he takes these witnesses and he just basically takes them apart, and he's
so nice about it.
He's very folksy, right?
Yeah.
He's not.
What is Article 2 in the Constitution? What does it do?
He's not mean about it, right? Yeah. As a result of that, it's like you can't. I mean, the media wants to spin him, but it's hard to spin, some angry Republican, off his rocker guy, because he knows what he's talking about when he goes in there. I think he studied everything beforehand, and so he's ready, and he knows that he can probably poke holes in some of these people, and he just does a very good job and puts them on their heels, and it's just like it makes for magnificent television. It's great. I mean, I love.
Yeah, he's really hurt Biden on judicial nominations, right?
Yeah,
he exposes we can vote for him or whatever, but these people have no clue about the law.
Yeah,
a lot of people think that's a good qualification for a judge, that he knows about the law.
Let's see what he says here. Yeah,
that's right.
So, what are your thoughts here about Massie now joining Marjorie Taylor Greene on saying that maybe Johnson ought to go? I mean, is that going to move the needle?
No, I don't think so. I think I don't think they have the votes right now for a motion to vacate the chair. If they did, they would have before. Johnson's in an almost impossible spot, right? There are some members of his caucus that need to vote however they need to vote on Ukraine, right? There need to be a vote. But the fact is, if you bring it to the floor, it probably will pass, because a lot of those people who need there to be a vote so that they can vote for it. And all the Democrats will vote for it because it helps Biden. So he has stood in the breach of funding for Ukraine now for months. And the Russians have realized that there's inaction and likely to be inaction, to stop them for more months. Even if it passed today, it would be months before, any of this would actually help Ukraine, right? Make it any more battle worthy or whatever. So the Russians are stepping up. They're trying to close the deal. And, no one has proposed that we send enough aid or material or whatever to Ukraine to actually roll back the Russians, actually push them out of the country, right? And if you did vote for that, you might well be voting for World War III and nuclear war, right? Because if you really put forth the effort it would take to kick the Russians out of Ukraine, you might well provoke a nuclear war, right? So what is the plan? Well, you want us to send more money over there? Okay, that's fine. What can we expect? What can we even hope to accomplish with that money? And if you don't have an answer to that, then we shouldn't send the money. I mean, I was all for sending money as long as I thought it could change the outcome, but now it doesn't look like it can. So I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why at the beginning you and I were both in agreement. I think in terms of let's send the money. We weren't in favor. We weren't on board with the Republicans that at the get-go were against it starting 2 years ago. But it's been over 2 years, and we it's been a very tough slog. And I think at this point in time that if you're going to throw out more money to Ukraine, that you kind of need to find out what is going on here. How is this money going to be spent? what are the expectations? What are, I guess they talk about deliverables or whatever in business parlance and stuff like that. Give us some deliverables. Give us, Zelensky, tell us what the plan is here and how you plan to deliver on the money that we go. I mean, if something, rather than just say, here's this money, go buy more weaponry, more material or whatever, and just, do whatever you need to keep, holding off the Russians. I don't think that cuts it anymore. I think you need more specifics than that. We've gone from generalities to specifics. We want specifics.
Right.
Otherwise, this thing is going to go on forever. I mean,
right. If you have a plan, let's hear it. I mean, I'm not against a plan that would accomplish, getting Russia back out of Ukraine, or at least getting it to a level where the Ukrainians can accept it.
Right.
But I haven't heard that plan. If that plan's out there, then make that public. That's your whole card.
Right. I mean, I think that's what it is. Is tell us what you're going to do. And if you, I mean, at least tell Congress. I don't necessarily need to know what your plan is. I don't need to know your battle plan per se. Nothing secret that gives away stuff that the
just tell me there's a battle plan that can do this. Right now, you're not even saying that.
Yeah, and then you give the details to the people who need to know, so that they can know that they can reassure us that there is a plan out there. But right now, it doesn't seem that there's one out there, and it's like, I understand why holding up aid to Ukraine is something that has grown, but once again, like you said too, there are representatives, Republicans, who need to vote a certain way on this kind of thing, and so from the day that Johnson was voted the speaker, it was impossible. I mean, he came in under an impossible situation, and has been trying to navigate it to the best of his ability. But these, the Republicans are just, as a caucus right now, they're kind of in this internal warfare mode, and so this is what we want. If you don't toe this line, this group of people is going to revolt, and you're going to lose your position, and stuff like that. So that threat has been hanging over his head since day one. So John's comment here.
Yeah, that's true too. Why I mean, that seems, and what he's talking about is to vote to extend FISA without a requirement that Americans who are picked up in surveillance are notified. Right? We attached a rider to that to make it. We had to notify Americans if they were going to be surveilled. You had to go through the warrant process and so forth. Now what happens is FISA gives warrants to eavesdrop on communications involving foreigners who are suspected of crimes. And if you have a foreigner has a conversation with an American, the government is allowed to listen and prosecute the American based on what the American says in that conversation too. Okay, so because foreigners do not have the same rights as Americans, they don't have our civil rights. The Bill of Rights doesn't apply to them. So, so now this legislation has come along and it's saying extend being able to do it without telling Americans they're being surveilled, and Republicans are saying no to that. And apparently they set Johnson down and showed him the ramifications of the decision. And he's like, okay, if that's actually what happens, then I support extending this privilege some more. Can't imagine what they told him. And I'm somebody who's ready to shut down the whole FISA courts. And I understand where all these people are coming from, but we also don't know what all is collected through FISA, or he has information about the consequences of shutting this down that you and me don't.
Right. And I think that's part of the problem for us as average Americans, is that there's a lot there that we don't know and we'll never really know and can't know because of secret. You can't just expose these things. In a general sense, I think it's okay to surveil people if you've got a legitimate reason. The problem with a lot of these things and this is not just the U.S. I mean, this is worldwide. It's just there's a rampant, surveillance, things that go on for people that people are being surveilled for no good reason at all. But I mean, if you're part of a criminal element and you've already shown that and things like that, and then you're interacting with other people, yeah, there's certain things I think that easily you can be surveilled, but there's a lot of other things that I think just on a tip that can't be verified or whatever, and you surveil them. That seems to be a little sketchy. But once again, we don't know everything that happens within the intelligence community, intelligence gathering. We don't know exactly what happens in a FISA court. We're not privy to all of that. So it's hard for us to really judge everything on this. So I feel like I'm in that terrible position. I was like, I've got to trust these politicians.
It's rough, man.
That's hard. I was like, it's like I have to trust that these people have our best interest at heart. But it's like, that's a pretty tough, big hill to climb. I think to do that. So let's. I guess one last thing here before we wrap it up. So NPR, apparently we spoke very, very briefly about this editor who went out and wrote an op-ed piece, an opinion piece, basically about the lack of transparency, I guess, or just the
ideological balance.
Yeah, ideological balance at NPR. Nothing that really surprises conservatives. I mean, we've been talking about this for decades, but he put it out there. The guy's been there working for what was he, 25 years or something like that as a senior editor.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he puts this piece out, and so now NPR has suspended him. I don't know how long the suspension will last, and they threatened him that if he does anything like that again, he's out. Which is then creates a whole nother thing. It's like, so exactly, does NPR believe in free speech? I mean, so the guy he expressed an opinion. Does he not have a right to express an opinion about that? Realizing that he did, he did bite the hand that feeds him. But we've seen that people have been doing that. There's been instances where people have come out and talked about it. Yeah. Sometimes
Scott Adams talks about it. He says, in the modern world, right? When you're talking about, you want to hire a diverse workforce, it's not really black, white, Hispanic anymore. It's ideological. You need to have some conservatives and some leftists working together, right? Because otherwise, especially in things like that, you'll miss the conclusion if you have them all on one side. So yeah, this is just a guy saying, we're losing audience because we went far hardcore left, and like the middle of the road people have always realized we were left, right? But they're like, okay, it's interesting, and it's not polemical, and it's not it's they're just giving me information, and yeah, they have a bit, but that's okay because we all understand that, and they're giving me good information. Well, now it's just hardcore leftist drivel, and those people are turning away. And that's the point the guy was making. Now they've hired a new CEO who is going to make things worse, right? She was in charge of this guy getting suspended. Her tweet history is awful about, she's, completely woke and men are bad and white people are terrible and, all this kind of stuff. And that's what they hired. That's what they just brought on for NPR. So, NPR, I mean, they get about 10, 12% of their budget from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which is federally funded, is a federal government program. I think it's time for government not to fund any political TV shows. I think, we have enough political shows. Right? Here's one here that we do of our own money, right? The government doesn't need to be paying for more of this. And B, because you're never going to get, it says in the law, the enabling legislation for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, that it's going to present stuff of general interest and avoid any ideological bent. Well, obviously, it's hardcore leftist, and the president, the new CEO they've hired, is to the left of even the typical NPR employee. So, they've dealt themselves a bad hand, and they deserve the publication, the bad publicity they're getting for it.
All right. Well, you've now taken us to the end of the program, so I'm going to have to wrap it up real quick. Thanks everyone for joining us. Please stay safe, stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And God bless America. And we will see you again next week.
And RIP Whitey Herzog, one of the greatest managers ever.